The Sony RX100 VII is a point-and-shoot camera that aims to fix all of the problems with those same cameras. Well, this is a prop. This is an RX100 Mark V prop. But the 7 has great 4K, amazing autofocus, and it even has a very useful and potentially game-changing 3.5mm audio in-jack. However, it's not totally perfect, and there are some issues that might keep it from being your all-in-one video package. Now, I've just got back from a week at Sony Kondo 3.0, and this is my very initial impressions after having a whole day with that tiny camera. Let's get to it. What's up, everyone? I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. So I'm a pretty big fan of Sony point-and-shoot cameras. Well, I'm a pretty big fan of one specific series of those cameras, and at this point we all know how much I like the RX100 Mark V series. I mean, the 5 and the 5 Alpha are basically a perfect all-in-one travel camera. However, after this camera, Sony started doing some weird things with their version 6, and it really started to make the 5 look even better, and I've never found a reason to upgrade from this little camera. So quick note for this video before we get started, Sony did fly me out to Kondo and they let me borrow the RX100 Mark VII for that whole day while I was out there. So I haven't personally purchased this camera. I mean, I might, but I haven't yet. So this video also will be split into two parts. The first one where I talk about the video quality, and then one that I shot in my hotel at Kondo going over ease of use and ecosystem. I mean, let's just say lesson learned for having a lav mic on a crinkly jacket because Oregon gets cold in the morning. Who knew? So that leads us into the three things that I think are most important for the online content creator. First up, video quality. Now the RX100 Mark VII has a similar 1-inch sensor as the rest of the RX100 line. It can shoot in 4K and up to 30 frames per second, and I don't know where I heard this, but I was under the impression it could record 4K for longer than 5 minutes at a time, and that's not the case. It's just like the other RX cameras, since the 4 it's limited to 5 minutes at a time when recording in 4K. But I was able to find that I could record 5 minutes more often, whereas if you try to record 4K on the RX100 Mark V, once it overheats once, it's like a cascading effect where it gets worse and worse until it just won't work. The 7 continues the high frame rate slow motion capabilities of the other RXs, and to my untrained eye, I think it looks way better than my Mark V. Now you can see some noise when shooting in the 480 frames per second mode, but it's not that bad. And honestly, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it once it's uploaded to YouTube. Like, I don't think you'll be able to notice the difference. Let me know if you can. The image quality out of the camera is stunning. I mean, it's really good. Now, when you can control the lighting, you can get some excellent images out of the camera. And that's something that Sony sensors are getting really good at. They use a bigger resolution sensor and then they downsample that image into a lower resolution. On the Mark VII, it's 5K down to 4K. And again, looks fantastic. However, and there's always just gotta be a but there, right? So I do have some problems with the image quality, and it's not really the technical image quality if you consider like when you can control the lighting, like I said earlier. It's more about some of the choices made to the physical camera body itself. The first one is, like we mentioned, the camera's missing the internal ND filter that the older RX cameras, again, the 5 and 5 Alpha have, and the aperture only closes down to f11. So you might think that that should be enough because you've got a 1-inch sensor, it's tiny, you're already not getting that much light in, but as you can see from some of the footage here, using the camera during the bright daylight, the images are overexposed, and this is with me shooting in 30 frames per second with a 60 shutter speed, so it's about as dark as you can get the camera, and it can still be overexposed during the day. Now on the flip side of the equation, the Mark VII is also 2.8 at the wide, as opposed to 1.8, found again on the Mark V. I promise I'm not going to spend the whole video saying how much better the Mark V is. I hope. Because of that, you do end up missing out on a little bit of shallow depth of field due to the slower lens, much like that Mark VI that we talked about earlier. Unlike the 6 though, the Sony is really putting their low light lessons to the test on this camera. Even the 2.8 indoors looks great. I mean, you'll see this here in a second when we hop back to the past. So if the 2.8 worries you because camcorders generally have 2.8 and they don't look very good inside, don't worry. The 7 could absolutely work as an indoor studio camera. Now, image quality is only half of the video quality story, and the addition of the 3.5mm audio in-jack really does some great things for this update. Now, you've heard me mention this in plenty of videos, but Sony is one of the two companies, the other being Panasonic, that I really enjoy using the internal camera preamps, and they were able to mini-size, mini-sized, I like mini-sized better. They were able to mini-size their audio tech and put it in here because it works very, very well, and I have no complaints. You can do standard things like drop the internal gain on the camera, like on any of their bigger mirrorless options. And you know what? That is a good segue, and let's head back in time and space, back to when I was in Oregon, where you can see the rest of the video shot using the RX100 Mark VII and the Deity D3 Pro. See you there. Okay, and thank goodness we are back inside. It is freezing out there. I mean, it's August and it's like 40 degrees out there. How is the ease of use? And again, we'll go more in depth. I've only had this for a little bit, and I'm sure I've been prefacing that throughout the video. But actually, while we're here, let's swap out so you can see how the indoor image quality looks on the RX100 Mark VII. There we go. Here's the A6400 with the 10-18 that we were just shooting on. Now we are on the RX100 Mark VII, and you can see this is totally indoor studio test. I've got no studio light set up. Actually, this is just a window in my hotel room out here, and we are on auto ISO and 2.8. And like I said outside, I understand Sony's choice of making this a 2.8. They're already, all of their camcorders, their RX100 Mark VI is already a 2.8, and they're getting so good at low light that this image quality looks perfectly fine. Now, another brand's 2.8 is not gonna look the same as Sony's 2.8, and that's just reality. But how easy is the camera to use? Now, much like the A6400, it does have the flip up screen. It has touch to focus on the back. I really wish Sony would just kind of like give us full touch functionality on the back of the screen. This is a problem with all of their cameras. It doesn't matter what camera you're using. They do not give you a touch screen that lets you like touch to go through the menus, and that's something that I really like about both Panasonic and Canon cameras. It's really easy. So like right now, I'm sitting in front of the camera, and if there's an issue with the camera, I can't just be like done. I have to stop recording. I have to go behind the camera and fiddle with the physical controls of it to fix whatever it is. And maybe that sounds like a little bit of a nitpick, but I like just being able to stay in one spot because I know my lighting's fine, I know my framing's fine, I know everything works. It's those little things that make a camera easier to use. But again, the menu system, you're either gonna like it or you're gonna hate it. It continues to be Sony's menu system. Now, I don't personally have a problem with it. Since they started doing their new version, I think with the A6500, where they color code everything, I actually don't mind it. Now, I do not like Fuji and I do not like Olympus menu systems, but I know there's a subsection of people out there that just, no matter what Sony does, they will hate the menu system. So if you're one of those people, you're gonna hate these menu systems. If you're not one of those people, then you might like them. I don't have a problem with them. But a big thing when it comes to ease of use for me, I'm always wearing polarized sunglasses. Bright outside. I don't like it when it's bright, so I wear sunglasses to protect that. Now the A6400, when you wear polarized sunglasses, there's no problem with the screen. You can still continue to see it. The A7 III and the RX100 Mark VII, I don't know how they align their screens, but this one also, if you have polarized sunglasses on, you will not be able to see the screen. Now, like on the A7 III, once you put a screen protector on there, it started to work, so I assume that would happen here. I don't have a screen protector here to use to see if that would work. But again, much like the RX100 Mark V, the RX100 Mark VI, I do really like the physical controls of the 7. It's very easy to set up. It's very easy to use. Their function menu is actually starting to get more robust, and it's turning into more of like a quick menu, like on my GH5, where when you hit the quick menu, it actually gives you access to everything that the camera can do. And on the RX100 Mark VII, it's getting there. It gives you the option for stabilization. It gives you the option for ISO. It gives you the option for all sorts of things. I just like it. I like being able to more efficiently use a camera. And as we saw during we're not gonna go out and vlog again because again, it's freezing out there, but like we saw during the vlogging test, there are 3 real things that I consider for after you hit record for ease of use: stabilization, way to monitor, and autofocus. And this thing has all of them. It's got really good stabilization. You have to use an app to get the best stabilization, and all of the footage you've seen so far in this video is me hand holding the camera because ain't nobody got time to upload that footage to an app to make it work. I certainly don't, you probably don't, so we won't be doing that today. But the stabilization is still really good. You can monitor your audio, you can see everything while you're in front of the camera, and the autofocus is insane. It's even better. It's got the eye autofocus in video, which my A6400 doesn't have, and I currently think the A6400 is the king of continuous video autofocus. This is the best camera I've ever owned with autofocus. Maybe the RX100 Mark VII will be the next one. So we've talked about video quality, we've talked about ease of use. Now the next step is ecosystem. And like all the other point and shoot cameras, there is no ecosystem. It's an all-in-one package. Now I will say, something that you might want to get is, I know there are third-party manufacturers that do make like magnetic ND filters to use on this camera, and that's something that I would really suggest. If I do end up buying the RX100 Mark VII myself, I will be getting something like that. I'm very disappointed that this does not have the built-in ND because the aperture here will only go to f11. Now you may have noticed some of the footage from outside earlier today is a little overexposed, and that's why. If you can't mess with the shutter speed, you only can go to f11 and there's no ND, well, you're kind of like, there's only certain times that you can use this camera outdoors. So big recommendation, if you're gonna get this camera for accessories, get a magnetic variable ND filter. So all of that put together, this camera's amazing, and it should be amazing for the $1,200 price tag, and that really begs the question, is this camera worth buying for $1,200 bucks? And if you are looking for a single camera, no, do not buy the RX100 Mark VII. You could buy the Sony a6400 for way less. You can find these used for like $700-800 bucks with the kit lens, and that will do more for you than the RX100 Mark VII. You get unlimited 4K recording. You may not have the stabilization, but the colors are the same. It's got audio in, it's got the flip up screen. I just like the a6400 if I could only have one camera. But if you've already got a system and you're just looking for a travel camera, this with the long zoom lens, the awesome 4K, the audio, this starts to make a lot of sense in that case. It is expensive. I do wish it was not as expensive, and it's missing the ND filter. I do wish it recorded 4K for longer than 5 minutes at a time, but you do get a lot out of this camera, and for me, it might be replaced. This might turn into like a studio camera, and this will become my travel camera because the slow motion, insane for B-roll. It just is. It's a really great camera. But this was just a really quick hands-on impression out here at Sony Kondo 3.0. Again, thanks to Sony for flying me out here so that I can try out all their cool gear. I'm not going to complain about that. But what are some things when we do get this in? Let me know what are some things that you'd like to see in the comments below. And yeah, thanks for watching.